Lieutenant Worf doesn't remember his mother smiling when he knocked over a green lamp. The eating habits of Corvin Gilvos are very similar to Draco lizards, and the Enterprise is coming up on B'Elanna 3. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sir Rock Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we are doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 5, Episode 10, New Ground. This is a story by Sarah Charno and Stuart Charno, teleplay by Grant Rosenberg, directed by Robert Shearer. This was January 4th, 1992. We are now into 92. Where were you?
Uh-oh.
And how you doing today,
Deep Space
Sarah?
Nine coming up. Deep Space 9 years coming soon. I'm doing great. Doing great.
All right. Everybody, please make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon for notifications. If you're listening in, give us a 5-star rating and a nice review. Please, we'd really appreciate it. And go visit us on patreon.com/the7th-rule to be a part of this fun team and podcast that we all enjoy. All right, Sirach. So there's actually a lot to talk about in this episode. I say actually because I didn't think there would be. It's an Alexander episode. And I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be brutally honest.
Uh-oh.
I was never a big fan of the Alexander episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that a lot of people, when they're kids, they love identifying with the kid in the story or the kid in a movie. Or when they're watching Transformers, Transformers has like 2 kids that transform so that you could follow along with the kids. And I never liked the kids. When I was 7 years old and watching Transformers, I'm like, I'm not watching Transformers to see 2 7-year-old kids. I'm not going like, that kid's just like me. I'm like, I don't care about the humans. I'm watching this for the Transformers. When I was watching Star Trek, I'd be like, I don't care about a 5-year-old. 13-year-old, 18-year-old, fine. 5-year-old, no interest. Wesley Crusher, fine. Jake Sisko, fine. Nog, fine. 5-year-old, no interest.
Yeah.
But that's me. I know I'm kind of in the minority there.
Well, I'm. You're not in the minority. I would say that there's some validity to your feelings, specifically as it relates to Worf. I think it doesn't reflect on him in a positive light. The way this parenthood
Totally.
and parenting is laid out in the storyline, it only makes Worf look bad. And so I feel like they did his character a disservice by him kind of being the father who likes to abandon, quote unquote, his kid. And if it was done in a different way, where, for example, the custody of his child was taken away by the courts or something, and he really didn't have a say in the matter, or the child himself wanted to be with his grandparents and didn't like being on a space station or spaceship, and so if that was the reasoning behind it, it would favor Worf, because then it gives him an out. It gives him the excuse, character-wise, for why he's not involved in his kid's life. And so I think they did him a disservice by having it be on him being somebody who's like, get this kid out of my face. I don't want nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
And so that's one separate issue. That's just let's put this kid storyline on the Worf character. Which I think is not done in the right way. The second part is what you said, which is, I'm not really watching the show to see some kid adjust to Enterprise life. I want to see, Enterprise going through its missions and problem solving and alien world building and all of the diplomacy of what they engage in. And this is kind of like too close to a Family Matters,
like the sitcom Family Matters
like
with Urkel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is like a sitcom-y type show thing where the kid comes over, it's awkward, jokes.
Yeah.
Interruption. My kid needs me. My kid needs me. Sorry, Captain.
Womp womp.
Yeah. So it's like one of those kinds of storylines that doesn't allow for what is best suited for Worf's character and his performances. Worf's performances are better served in different ways, and not necessarily in this, where he's always kind of frustrated and doesn't have certainty, because a lot of what he does is done with a sense of certainty. Even when he's wrong, it's like, Captain, I think we should do this. Nope, no, Worf, not right now.
Yeah.
But there's a certainty to it, like a matter of factness of like, this is how it goes. This is how I do it.
That's a
And
good
then
point.
in this, this
just to
like,
add,
boom.
just to add to that, because that's funny when you have this character that is always certain, and then suddenly he's not, and that's a funny moment. But having that throughout an entire episode is crazy, because then it becomes less and less funny the more you do it. I mean, it's funny because it's Worf and we love Worf, but when we had the Robin Hood episode, if you'll recall, Worf saying, "I'm not a merry man," that was funny because it was that singular moment. If he was doing that 40 times in the episode, "Sir, I'm not a merry man. Sir, that's not Maid Marian. Sir, I cannot pee on a tree." Like if you just get, eventually we'd be like, all right, Worf, we get it. Why don't you go kill something over there? That's it.
And
Anyway.
then the brunt of this particular joke is his absentee parenting. So they keep revisiting that part of the joke, really, and it's not even funny, to be honest with you, because it's actually sad, right? So, so you're revisiting a sad joke about his own ineptitude in fatherhood, and I guess he gets a little bit of redemption, and towards the end, when he has a moment where he can save him and use his superhuman parental strength that comes in these kinds of courageous moments, right?
Yeah.
And and so they gave him, I guess that was the redemptive moment for him, and also having a conversation towards the end about what he wanted to do. But that's it's like, the problem with this is it's like being a good parent for like a week. Right? That's basically what this episode is. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
he's being a good dad this week, and then but he can't wait to shuffle him off somewhere so he doesn't have to do this anymore, right?
Yeah, and he looks very clearly annoyed when his own son is showing up on his ship. He's just like, okay, I guess, yeah, you can come here. When are you leaving? And this and that. That's why there is definitely a running joke among Star Trek fandom about Worf being Father of the Year, sarcastically, because he's like the worst dad. He doesn't even like his son. Like, he doesn't even like his. I guess I could stop right there. He doesn't like his son.
He doesn't like his son.
He had his own issues because both of his parents died. They got slaughtered, basically in front of him when he was a toddler. It's very sad. It's very horrible. So this is also very possible that he can have these parental issues and not be a great parent himself because of it. But as you said, that's a sad thing. That's not like, oh boy, Worf is such a terrible parent. Now we can joke about it 30 years later, but I don't know if when they were writing this back in the day, they were realizing that it's kind of, I don't want to say tacky, but it's like, it's not as funny as it's not as lighthearted humor as they thought it was 30 years ago. They're like, let's make Worf a terrible father. Oh man, that's so funny. But then they're not thinking about, well, then there's also a 4-year-old child who has a terrible father that doesn't like him. That's actually very sad.
That's actually very sad.
Horrible. Yeah. His mom is dead and his dad doesn't like him. Why? Just doesn't like him. He doesn't like how he was born. And, he's like, just go over there.
Yeah, and that it actually brought me back, what you're just saying, just like brought me back to the moment where his mom, Kalar, died.
Yeah.
And Worf was like, "Look at her, look at it."
Right. I forgot about that.
You
Gross.
remember how he like pushed it in his face, like, "This is what remember what a dead body looks like,"
Like
or
he was a
something.
dog that had thrown up on the floor, right?
Yes,
He's rubbing
yes,
his
like he
nose
was
in it.
teaching him a lesson. Yeah, like he did it or something. Like, you don't do this again. Like, and the trauma associated with that. You know, I don't know. There's a contradiction there because you got Worf trying to tell him he needs to be more Klingon like, but yet you sent him to live in America with the same people that raised you. So
Worse,
he's
Russia.
okay. Send him to Russia. So
Yeah.
so how are you going to be more Klingon like if you're not ever exposed to it? Um, you so if you want him to be like that, then it's upon you to expose him to that and say, "Hey, I want even." I mean, remember, this is the 24th, 5th century, right? 24th, 5th century in this show, right?
Almost 24th.
Right. So we can communicate with phones today, FaceTiming, Zooming. There's just right now we're able to communicate and visually look at each other and spend time with each other and have conversations.
Yeah.
So even if you're not physically there in the future, you have the ability to be there in multiple different ways. Probably hologram projecting yourself.
I
If
was
you
thinking the
really want
same
to.
thing. He could literally tuck him into bed every night if he wanted to.
Yes. And so he's not even taking those steps. We don't see Worf's, at his quarters sometimes with his son saying, "Did you read
Yeah.
the Klingon book I sent you? I want you to sing me some Klingon opera," or whatever,
Yeah.
just to maintain the fact that Worf is trying to be a good father a little bit without when we don't see
He's trying to be present.
Alexander.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we don't see that.
Mm-mm.
We
That's a
see
good
when he
point.
shows up, he's like, "What are you doing here?"
Yeah.
It's like, how long are you gonna be here for?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then can I send you to boarding school or whatever, a Klingon boarding school, basically.
That would be so
Uh,
sad for that kid, throwing him off
he,
to a Klingon boarding school where he's like, I just grew up with like first my mom, then I went over to Siberia. Now I'm going to get beat up by a bunch of Klingon kids because I got softened up in Novgorod, which everybody knows is not actually in Siberia.
yeah, but that was very good pronunciation. Uh, but yeah,
Maybe.
I feel bad. I know, right? I couldn't correct it, but
Yeah.
I feel bad for this kid, man, because he was packing his bags up, like, "Get out of here! I want to send you the." Can you imagine? I mean, a boarding school by itself has a reputation of being a difficult place, but can you imagine a Klingon boarding school?
That sounds terrible. That sounds terrible, man.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like it's going to be a pleasant experience. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm with you about number one. When I saw it was Alexander episode, I'm like, oh well, um, you know, I expected my expectations went down for how good I thought the episode was going to be. I was like, okay, this is the kid actor guest starring, and there's this is going to be that.
Right.
And it's difficult for children actors too because they're usually typecast into one of two categories. The child is either a pestilent, annoying brat, spoiled brat type kid, who never listens or
Right.
whatnot, or they are the boy genius, problem solver who knows everything, right? The Doogie Howser, and it's like there's not the kind of blend of sometimes this guy's really good and sometimes he makes big mistakes like a child does, like a kid does. It's like one day you're proud of them because they got an A on their test, and then one day you're mad at them because they're getting suspended from school for a fight, right? It is
Or they're
like,
knocking over a green lamp at grandma's house.
or yeah, exactly. So, or they didn't pick up their little sister from school, on time. So there's all kinds of uh, personality variations and shades when it comes to being a kid, yet they're normally written in a very specific way. I thought the kid did a pretty good job, but there was moments when I thought he was annoying, and I thought, Worf, would you give him a good old fashioned Klingon belt whooping? I thought he was going to take his belt off and say, "That's enough of
His
that,
sash,
son."
pull off his
Sash.
metal sash
Yeah.
and
He
bust him.
says, "You know what? I'm gonna start
Don't make me
unflicking his
take this
sash."
off, kid. So, what I thought when it first came on back in the day, and again this time because I didn't remember it too well, was immediately thinking, "Oh, I hope this is the B plot." And I was actually really surprised that it was not the B plot because I don't feel like this needed to be an entire episode. I feel like it could have maybe been better and funnier if it was a B plot and they wouldn't have had to like try to stretch it into a full episode. You'd have to change up the soliton wave stuff to make it an A plot, make it big.
Mhm.
But then, then the description is the soliton wave, blah, 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 could blow up, whatever. Meanwhile, Worf is visited by his son, and Worf needs to decide what to do with that or something like that. Then it's quick, it's easy, it's a few jokes, it's a little cute, and I don't know. I just feel like they should have reversed the polarity on that one, but maybe I'm wrong there.
I'm going to have to agree with that as well. And, I want to highlight one thing that stands out for me, and that is the writers are Grant Rosenberg, and Sarah and Stuart Charno, right? So they're not the staff writers. They're not the
Exactly.
guys there that are there all the time.
I don't even
right?
recognize their names. I don't know. I wanted to look into them too and say, have we ever even seen these people before?
Right. And so perhaps they're freelance writers that submitted a script, and their script got chosen because, we know that Michael Piller had a history of doing that. And so that's my guess that they took an element of something they saw in the first or third season of the show. They were familiar with the show, so they know that Worf has a kid, and they probably submitted an episode regarding that storyline. And to me, that's why this episode doesn't have the same continuity of the other episodes. It is like a guest writer coming in to just throw in an episode.
Well, we do have some information on Stuart Charno, and there was one thing I noticed about Sarah Charno before we get into, because we'll talk about them more on the other side of the break, but there was one thing I did notice about Sarah Charno just at the beginning before we even started this, which was her name on IMDb was Sarah B. Cooper as Sarah Charno, which means it was written by Sarah Charno at the time, but now she's Sarah B. Cooper. So maybe she got mad about the script, or maybe because clearly they have the same last name, and now they don't. But anyway, there's a lot more to uncover there, as well as with Grant Rosenberg, and a couple other things I wanted to bring up. Like there was one thing that just distracted me to where I couldn't. I missed entire chunks of the episode because I was so distracted. And it's my own fault, but I want to get into that. I know. First time I've ever blamed myself for something. It felt weird. It kind of felt tickly. Anyway, we'll be right back on the Seventh Rule. Hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the Seventh Rule with Sirach frickin' Lofton.
Hello.
Here are the trivioids of the week, everybody. You go a little something like this. The Enterprise is coming up on B'Elanna 3. More on B'Elanna in a moment. A new method of propulsion known as the soliton wave is being developed. Alexander is excited about the Enterprise play area. Remember when McDonald's had a play area? What happened? We had it so good. Worf doesn't remember his mother smiling when he knocked over a green lamp. Is Worf getting a touch of gray in his beard? Worf doesn't even know that Alexander was born on the 43rd day of Maktag, stardate 43205, obviously. The eating habits of Corvin Gilvos are very similar to Draco lizards, and Kalis and his brother Moroth fought for 12 days and 12 nights, although they called them Kales. There was so many weird inconsistencies in this episode. So for one, B'Elanna 3, the planet they went to.
Yeah, I've heard that name before. Where have we heard B'Elanna?
B'Elanna Torres was played by Roxanne Dawson in Voyager for 7 seasons. It was spelled totally differently. But anyway, it was just funny to hear them say B'Elanna. I was like, what the heck? And the play area, the star date, they called Kales, what we know as Kales, they kept calling him Kales. And how many times does this happen in Star Trek where the name, they call somebody by something one season, and then the next season or in a different series that's like pronounced totally differently. So Kales became Kales. That was weird. When Alexander said, I like Kales, or whatever he said, and then Worf, I was like, oh, Worf's going to correct him. And he didn't. He called him Kales too. I'm like, you guys are killing me over here. So I don't know if that changed or what.
They're Kyling you. But I mispronouncing. But no, I wonder at this time if they had pronunciation guides. Because I know when we were doing DS9, in the front of the script, there would be a section there where they would have all of the names of aliens or things that were being introduced there that nobody would know how to pronounce, including character names. They would have it in the pronunciation guide and have it phonetically spelled next to it so that you had an understanding. So I wonder about when that pronunciation guide was put into effect for Star Trek, because maybe they observed this very same phenomenon and said, wait a minute, we have to get everybody on the same page. The other thing I have as a suggestion, because perhaps they already have the pronunciation guide, and that is nobody reads the pronunciation guide,
including the director. like I'm thinking, look, it's up to the actor to do that, okay? But even if the actor doesn't, the director should, right? The director should walk in and be like, be like this, and they go, or the script supervisor.
The script supervisor, yeah,
right.
Yeah,
script supervisor. Good, but pronounced Kales. I know it looks like Kales, but it's pronounced Kales. Kales? Yeah, Kales. Okay, Alexander, it's Kales. Kales. Yes, perfect.
If somebody said Commander Worf, or Commander Riker, Commander Riker, can I ask you a quick question?
Riker.
They would say, yeah, hey, Commander Riker. They would say, cut. It's pronounced Riker, right?
Yeah. Oh, Riker. Okay, got it. Riker, Commander Riker. Okay, okay, let's do it again.
Boom.
Happens all the time. So then that's why my other question is, well, okay, so maybe it went through all these filters and everybody missed it. Maybe there wasn't the pronunciation guide yet, which I doubt, but I don't know. Or maybe it just changed in the pronunciation guide. Maybe it was, I don't know, but there's definitely these inconsistencies, and we always notice them, like Picard calling Bajor. We'll go over to Bajor.
Censors say they had a censors line in this episode too.
Right now, everybody can't decide, and then Omicron. Everybody pronounces Omicron differently. It's anyway. So
yeah,
the other thing was
it slips through the cracks.
There was like 6 weeks off for the holiday season, because the last episode was something like November 11th or November 7th, and then this was January 4th. So that was a big space. And then there was something else I noticed. I don't remember. So let's look at...
you were going to give us something about the Charno. I think you said Grant Rosenberg.
So Stuart Charno, he's mostly an actor. He's got a lot of acting credits, but only one section for writing credits, and it's all for Next Generation. So clearly he was like some kind of Star Trek fan, because he didn't do any other writing, just that. And he pitched it, he and his wife at the time, clearly. He has 3 credits. One was story by season 4, The Wounded.
Okay.
Then there's this one, story by, and then a third story by season 5, 6 episodes from now, an episode called Ethics. So now, out of
Okay.
curiosity, I'd like to see if Sarah Charno, aka Sarah B. Cooper, has those exact same credits.
Okay. Yeah.
And what
That's
I'm
very
seeing
interesting.
is, as suspected, she's got a ton of writing credits. So she was the writer amongst the couple, and they came up with ideas together. They pitched them to get together. This was his only writing credits, but she's got a ton. Not within Star Trek. She's got the same 3 for Star Trek, but she's done a bunch of other things. So clearly, they worked together on something that was already a passion of hers. She was a writer. He was an actor. That's kind of fun. And then they're like, let's pitch stuff together. So that's pretty cool. And that's great that, she brought him in and did all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. That's really interesting and fun. But then lastly, I wanted to look at Grant Rosenberg as a director because I don't remember his name. So I don't
Well, he
know.
did the teleplay. The director was Robert Shearer.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. We've heard his name before for
Yeah, we've
sure.
heard him before. Yeah,
Um,
but
Grant
Grant did the
Rosenberg.
teleplay.
Right. This is the only episode. Just this one. He's got other writing credits, but so it seems like he was just like a writer for hire, where people will be like, hey, we're busy or we're on a Christmas break. We're going to pay you to, write up this episode. It's already been pitched. Here's the outline that we came up with, something like that. I don't really know how it worked back in the early 90s, but they hired the writer and he wrote an episode for him.
Yeah, it sounds. Yeah, it sounds like it's written by somebody who doesn't really have the voice of the characters really down packed to me. I mean, I didn't feel a strong voice for the characters, and that's why I didn't. I also felt like if you're going to make the A story be Alexander, I would have liked to see more Troy in there. I thought Troy could have done more counseling, use her skills. She did kept, she was like offering him up, but I think it would have been better if
Yeah.
it just happened earlier on to get some of that therapy out for Worf, to get some of that frustrations out for Alexander. Um, but again, this episode has its limits. So right from the beginning, when you see the Alexander episode, you kind of know what it's going to be about, right? It's like, oh, this is an episode where Worf's going to be uncomfortable. Worf's going to have the awkward dad moments. He's going to be frustrated. Um, so in that way, it was very predictable. But like there was no like, I wonder what's going to happen, because I know I'm not going to see Alexander again for a few more episodes, if ever, and so
What if he's in like 30 episodes going forward? Would you be like, I did not see that
yeah,
coming?
yeah, then I would be upset. Then I would really be upset because I'd be like, this is, give me Will back if you're gonna, if I put Will back on there. I don't want to see this kid. I want to see Crusher. So I don't know. Like I said, it was very predictable. Now for the B plot, it had its little moments about riding this sonic wave or whatnot. There was some,
Sonic
you know,
Boom.
sonic boom. There was some, what I like to see was Jordy's enthusiasm about it.
That was
I
great.
could have liked, yeah, I could.
When
That
he's
was
like,
really good for me.
Donaldson, you're an engineer. You're gonna love this. Like that was cute.
Yeah,
I like that.
yeah. And then he's like explaining how excited he is, and he's like, I guess I'm talking to the wrong crowd because Worf's like very exciting or something like.
Yeah. Yeah. Data was like, it should be interesting. And when he looks at War, he's like, yes, very exciting. And he's like, okay, you guys, this is not. I need a nerd. Somebody give me a nerd.
Exactly.
So now we're getting into the thing that was very distracting to me.
Uh-oh.
which was in the conference room when Worf comes in late, which I thought was actually kind of funny because Geordi like stops what he's saying to like look at Worf. Like, dude, cut him some slack, man. And then there was a two shot, right? There was Geordi and Data over his shoulder, you know, kind of behind him. And as Geordi's explaining stuff, and then Data would pipe in here and there. I have a theory that this was one of those scenes that came up in a lot of bloopers. Because for some reason, when I was looking over at Brent Spiner, and while Geordi was talking, I was watching Brent, and he looked like he was trying really hard not to laugh. Like it seemed like this was like take 9, and because he was just like I don't know. There was just it's hard to explain. I could be way off, but I couldn't stop looking at him. I'm like, at any moment, it felt like he was just going to burst into laughter, and I could just sense it. So I feel like I missed all the explanation about the soliton wave, and it bothered me. And I kept going back to listen, but every time I would go back to listen, I would just stare at Data and be like, he's going to laugh. I could see it. So, so I felt bad about that. So I actually went up to Memory Alpha, shout out to Memory Alpha, and I looked it up because I'm like, I feel like it's not fair to the writers and to Star Trek that it was my own fault that I was so completely distracted by it. But anyway, if anybody's watching that episode, go back and watch Data. Am I imagining this? Or did it look like he was about to bust up, or he had been, and he's thinking like, don't laugh, just act serious. It was almost like he was trying to remind himself, how does Data act? Because he was just trying to like focus on like, just don't laugh. So act how Data acts. I don't know. Maybe it was just me.
Well, I mean, it's not uncommon for actors to get a case of the giggles.
I know.
I've seen it happen.
Imagine.
I've seen it happen with everybody. There's just those moments where something's funny and you can't get out of your head, and you just have the giggles, and you really have to like get it together just to get through the scene, right? Like,
but then the harder you're trying to like
fight
get it together,
the
harder it gets, right?
Yes. And I imagine it's even harder when you have to play this straight-faced, robot Data. So it's like, and he wants to laugh so bad. So, yeah, I mean, it's happened to the best of us. It actually is a sign of good vibes on the set when it happens. It means that, you're having fun, people are laughing. It only becomes a distraction when it just goes on so long that everybody's like, all right, seriously, we really got to get this shot.
And then you're sitting there going like, I know, I'm sorry. I know, I'm not.
Yeah. 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 And now you're feeling bad about it, right? But you just can't stop. And now nobody else is laughing with you. You're just, and that's how it eventually, the fire goes out. Because at some point, no one else is laughing. And then you're like, all right, I get it. Not funny anymore. So,
yeah.
But yeah, the ride the wave, you didn't miss anything about the technological aspect of riding this solitonic wave. It was, it was just some type of,
Was nobody on that ship that got blown up by the wave?
I think it was a pilot ship, like a autopiloted ship, so nobody was on there because when they lost life.
When it blew up, nobody reacted, so I was like, oh, I guess nobody was on that ship. Okay, yeah, I just missed so much about that, and I felt terrible, and I kept going back, and I'm like, it was not sticking, and I was interested. I'm like, I want to know what the storyline is. There are only 2 plots. I can't just completely not be able to retain one of the plots. That's just like terrible of me. You know what I mean? And so I was trying to really focus on it. But I thought for what I did get, it was really interesting. It was just a new way to go to warp without using a warp drive. And it was like something like 98% more efficient. It was like insanely good. And that's cool. That's a good concept.
Which is interesting because you would think that there would be a callback to that in some of the subsequent Star Trek, right? Where they say, oh, we've got a new solitonic, drive engine or whatever it is, or some kind of turbo boost that allows us to travel faster than warp because we have this solitonic wave da 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 that's been perfected. But they never bring it back up. I will say though, uh, Alexander had a good line that I thought was well delivered, and it was just well written. But it was because it's truthful, and that's when he said to Worf, "All you care about is your honor." And I thought, man, this kid's got it right there. That's. I can't hear you. I can't
He
hear you.
got you pegged, Worf. He already knows
Yeah,
him.
yeah, he got it. That was accurate. I was like, damn, this kid got him already. Like it didn't take him long to figure that out. But I'll tell you what part. I know we're getting towards the end, but one part of it that just pissed me off a little bit, and actually, like this kid was borderline annoying, right? There were moments where he was like, "Dude, you're lying. We know you're lying," or he was just being like, "No, I won't. It is," just like, all right, it was annoying a little bit, right? Where if you were growing up in my age, you'd get a good smack on the face from
Yeah.
your mom, right? It's like, you better act right or I'm going to smack you in the back of the head or pull your ear. So it was one of those kind of tantrum moments. But when he's getting saved, Worf has the superhuman strength. He pulls that big, metal thing off of him, and they get him. And then he's like, "But save the little thing, whatever that creature was, right?"
Yeah. And the Rikers, they're like, no time. He's like, but they're only two. Okay. 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 So Riker goes and saves those ugly things that were
Yeah,
kind of cute.
the issue that I had with it was like literally seconds to go before they themselves would die, right?
And I would think that if Picard knew what had happened,
He would
he
be pissed.
would tear them up about that. He's like, dude, we're holding the ship to potential destruction
Yes,
down to the final second.
yes.
And even if it's not the ship, two of my most important officers almost died to say like I get it, it's cute, it's nice, it's important because they're endangered, but like, ooh, that is the wrong decision, bro.
Like you said, if Picard knew that the reason the delay took so long when he was calling for their name, like, hey guys, I need you out of there, and they weren't responding.
They were ignoring him because he had to go save some lizards.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was borderline. Like, okay, I, I don't, I don't know if that's believable.
Yeah. Well, I've got something else that's very interesting for you. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot here that I'm excited about. And that is for today's home run of the episode, Strockloft. And good luck. It's all yours. Who gets the home run of
Ah,
today's episode?
the home run of today's episode. Man, this is not an easy one because I honestly can't. I didn't have too many lines written down as memorable lines. Usually, I'm writing all the lines down. Like, oh, that was a great line. That was a great line. All I've got is Alexander saying, "All you care about is your honor." Um, I'm going to give the home run of this particular episode to Worf's mom. That gets back.
Oh,
Yeah,
Dark Horse.
yeah,
That's a fun one.
the dark horse. Yeah, I thought she had some good moments there when she said, "You and
Charming.
your father were getting older," and how she didn't answer the question of like, how long are you guys staying for? And she gave some really good facial expression looks, and um, yeah, I liked her.
I
Worf's mom.
like that. That's cool. So for me, um, during the episode, when the kid was doing his battle in the holodeck, I was thinking, whoever's playing battle monster guy is really good because he or she has to fight this little kid and go really easy on this little kid because it's a little kid. And I get they're not real weapons, but you still have to go really easy and you have to go really slow and really deliberately and let the kid lead and, let the kid move to the side and then swing, kind of stuff like that. But at the same time, still make it look real and believable and not ridiculous. And then while I was thinking that and admiring that person, I was like, I wonder if that's Dennis Madalone. I wonder if that's Dennis Madalone. And just now, 30 seconds ago, I went and scrolled through the credits and I found Holodeck Warrior, played by Dennis Madalone.
Yeah.
So home run goes to him because, to me, that's when real skill and professionalism shows up more than most major stunts. Like jumping out of an airplane obviously is insane and amazing and incredible. But there is an extreme difficulty in what he did with that kid to make it look good because he was doing that. There it is. Yep. He was doing that. And it didn't look like he was, going really easy on a kid. It looked like it was just a warrior swinging. So that was awesome. And obviously big points to the kid for being able to do it as well. But anyway, these are people
we'll really reach in when we give out those home runs.
But that really was what impressed me the most. Sometimes
I actually
sometimes it's the outfits.
The way his body language was from the reverse angle when he saw his back, he kind of hunched over and had his hand drinking. It was really believable. I thought, wow, that's
I loved it.
Good.
Say, all right.
Shout out to Dennis Madalone.
Love that dude. Almost as much or just as much as we love these people. Dr. Anne-Marie Siegel, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackman, Tom, TJ Jackson Bay out in Missouri, Titus Muller, Dr. Muhammad Nora, Anil O, Palat Jobal, Sarati, Mike Gu, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, a.k.a. Crewman Guy, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allison Leach Hyde, Julie Manasfi, Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Chris Sternick, Greg K. Wickstrom, Cassandra Gerard, one of the coolest names out there, Chuck A., Chris Garris, and of course, Jason Oken. Everybody stick around. We've got the free-for-all up next. Cassandra Gerard, am I right?
Gerard, yeah.
All right, everybody, we'll be right back on the Seventh Rule. Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome back to the Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton. This is the free-for-all with Melissa Longo.
Hello there.
Jason M. Oken is here as well. Thank goodness.
Hi, everybody.
Allison Leach Hyde looks like she's got a Cisco Kid shirt on. Nice. Carrie Schwent has her brand new Cruise shirt that she's wearing. Chuck A. is in a Prune Juice and Chill, perfectly timed shirt as well. Anil O. Palat is calling in from Germany, if you can believe that. The Dark Lord, Chris McGee, has his Ukraine pin ready to go. And the Matt Boardman looks like he's got a Picard head on his shirt from Walking Art made by Melissa. All right, everybody. Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score. Be gentle.
Yeah. I'm going to go with a 5-8.
Does anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know?
6-3.
I'd
go a little lower, 6-2.
Yeah.
6-5.
All right. I think we're going to hear that sound. That means somebody got exactly right. Let me check. Yep. Somebody did get it exactly right, Melissa. Who was it?
Chuck A.
6.5. Very good, Chuck. It's the lucky shirt. All right. Oh, we got a few non-appearance mentions, right? I got Sergei Rozhenko, right? And as well as Zephram Cochran and Kalar. Was there anybody else? Did I miss anybody?
Kalis.
Kalis.
Oh, yeah, duh, of course. Kalis. Did we ever see his brother, though?
No.
I don't think so. So just Kalis, okay. Are you sure it
Is
wasn't?
Kalis or Kalis?
Exactly. Kalis.
There was no pronunciation
Whoops.
guide on this script.
There's the answer, Srock. Jason
There's the
says there was
answer,
no.
Jason.
See? And Allison nodded approvingly.
Perfect.
She just did it.
We were wondering
Not a
about
lot.
that. We were wondering.
All right.
Yes.
What about some kind of or some sort of?
Not this time, strangely enough.
All right. Well then, Melissa Longo, it is time for you to get us started off on the right track. Would you please?
Yes. Sure. I'm just responding to Carrie's post in the chat. Uh, um, from what I hear in everyone's voices, talking about this episode going into it, not many people enjoyed it very much, but I did. I enjoyed this episode for several reasons. Because I'm a fan of Worf. Because I think he's probably one of the most well-rounded and flushed out characters in Star Trek. I love that he's flawed. I love that he doesn't have all the answers. I love that he's constantly trying to learn, but he gets in his own way all the time because, one, I think he's never healed from the loss of his parents, his birth parents. I feel like he lacks confidence in knowing who he is and where he belongs because he grew up with humans. He's not confident in his knowing how to be a Klingon, which was why I think he overcompensates and is rigid in the way that he acts and is less open or less gregarious than most Klingons that we see. Then we also, I'm trying to ignore the chat. We also, he also hasn't dealt with the grief of Kalar either, which Troy discusses as well. And I love that they actually use Troy for what she is here for. I love that she finally gets to have a conversation with somebody about what they're going through because she kind of nails it. She nails it. And so, yes, I get that Worf is bad dad. But I don't think he has the confidence to instill in a child what he feels that he's never had himself. He doesn't know how to guide this little person. He doesn't know what to do. He's out of his depth, of course. And I don't know anyone who has come with a parent's manual. So there are no perfect parents out there. And to claim to be one is a lie. It's a lie. You're gonna fail. You're gonna have hard times, and you're gonna have some successes. He didn't have the upbringing that Cisco had. He didn't have that father figure. He had the Rozhenkos who were great and they were wonderful, but again, they weren't Klingons. They weren't able to show him beyond their humanity how to be a Klingon. So, yeah, I think people rag on Worf a little bit too much in not understanding where he's coming from, why he is the way he is, and why he's not perfect.
Yeah, great stuff. Thank you very much, Melissa Longo. Also, gregarious is an excellent word to use for Klingon. That's a good one. Thanks very much. All right, Jason M. Oken, also gregarious. What'd you think of this one?
I am anything but. I think in terms of, people's reactions and what we're seeing, I think we've kind of reached the soft underbelly of the season. There's a string of these sort of episodes, and part of it makes me think that perhaps they've spent too much money on unification and other things, and they needed to save money. We're talking about a whole bunch of bottle episodes, one after the other. And this one, I think, is perhaps not the best looking one of them all. I'll get to that in a second. I mean, to me, it's, it certainly speaks more to me now as an adult than it did when I first watched it years ago. I think certain things that Worf is experiencing with Alexander rings true for a parent. I mean, there's nothing groundbreaking here, but at least it rings true. And if you look at who's, if you watch the episode and you know Deep Space Nine, you know who Stutch is on this episode. And why it has sort of these components of Deep Space Nine because of the story itself, and we see a sort of an imperfect Starfleet character, which is sort of unusual for the next generation for sure. And Worf, I guess, to some degree, an outsider, can be painted in those colors. Certainly not a perfect parent. Obviously, we have next generation characters, and Melissa said Troy is being used wonderfully here, and Marina is great here. I mean, she doesn't get a lot to do all the time, and her character is used properly. And unfortunately, the episode kind of in many parts looks like the original series. I think using a wide shot for a ship shake was not the best choice because it came off, frankly, rather cheap. And in some of the episode kind of lacked sort of a visual punch, and I think, thankfully, some of the music compensated for the tension, because it was, the tension was caused by music, not by what we're seeing on the screen. Because if you turn down the score, it just kind of goes flat. So I think the score was used very well for that purpose. I mean, there are things and flaws, and I'll talk about some of them later. But overall, I mean, I understand why it's not perhaps, the best of Star Trek episodes. It certainly gives us sort of a kind of a dramatic view and a parental view, more of a slice of life, if you will, on board the Enterprise. And I guess you have to have a science fiction story coming along. It's certainly in the Next Generation era. So it's almost like a MacGuffin. You got to have something that, some kind of problem you're dealing with, and all of a sudden it affects Alexander at the end. And before I conclude it, certainly, I mean, in my mind, kudos to Brian Bonsall for being able to act like this with all the prosthetics on his head at that age. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. So, I mean, I certainly appreciate what he was able to deliver as Alexander. So that to me kind of stood out as well. I mean, obviously, Michael's performance, Brian Bonsall's performance, and Marina's performance sort of kind of pretty high for me here. And I think that's what makes the episode, again, watchable. Is it the best? No, it's an average kind of filler episode. And I'll save the rest for later.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jason M. Oken. Boy, Jason and Melissa both pointed something out that Sirach and I should have mentioned, which was they did actually use Deanna Troi the way she was intended to be used. So they should get big kudos for that, because sometimes that's missed. Thanks very much, Jason. Allison Leach Hyde, in the heart of New Mexico. What'd you think of this one? Maybe
I'm with everyone on it. It's well acted. Is it exciting? No. And it's sweet to see Worf, come into fatherhood. My favorite scene is the last scene when he offers the greater challenge to Alexander of staying. I thought that's a wonderfully written and acted scene. I got a little teary about it. And, it's not the best episode, but it has heart, which I like. I also loved Michael's reaction when Alexander is revealed to be in the one room that's burning, the big eyes. I'm like, yes, thank you. I love that. I was a little sad we didn't get Beverly till the end, other than a little voiceover. I'm like, where's Beverly in this episode? It's even in my notes. I'm like, did we only hear her? Is she going to be here? Like, no, she has to take care of Alexander at the end. And of course, Gates does a lovely job. Everyone and all of our characters had, something that was well done. Data is fine, but I loved Geordi in the beginning being all excited about testing out the new type of warp drive, riding the wave like a surfboard, and giving spoilers for a movie, of how exciting it'll be with Zefram Cochrane. I thought that was great. It brings on a little giggle for me just watching it. I'm like, oh yeah, no, you get to see it. It'll be great. So spoilers, sorry, people who haven't seen First Contact. And I love his mother, Worf's mom. Mrs. Rozhenko. Her scene with him in 10 Forward is fabulous. And the whole bit when she goes, I didn't mean I was ready for the grave. I'm just not ready to be a parent again. Let me be a grandparent. Let me sugar him up and send him back to you. Like, that's what I want to do. So no, you have to have your boy back. And so love that scene. It's really sweet. And she's got the craziest hair and I love it. So what else do I really like about this episode? It is really Troy. Troy is fabulous because she's right in there. She knows Worf needs help with this situation because he's got baggage he has to deal with. And figuring that out with, a 5-year-old or 7-year-old kid, like that's hard for the 7-year-old kid. But I loved her line of, you both have healing to do. Maybe you should do it together. And that's what I think this episode's about. So, yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Allison Leach Hyde, out in New Mexico. Carrie Schwent, fresh back from the Star Trek cruise. What did you think of this episode? Did you love it?
I actually really did, and you'll have to forgive my voice. I'm recovering from a minor bit of post-cruise crud, so forgive my fairly crappy voice. But yes, and I very much love this episode, although I will say these waves behind me are the kind of waves I vastly prefer. Ocean waves are the best waves. Just saying, despite the prettiness of the Soliton wave. And I actually surprised myself because I'm watching that and I'm going, okay, that kind of method, it's not practical. And if you'd have told me 10 years ago I'd be yelling at the screen saying a mode of transportation on a sci-fi show was not practical, I probably would have laughed at you. Just one of those things that surprises you. But yeah, a couple things that very much that I wanted to highlight. We have the final appearance, sadly, of Skeletor on the holodeck in Worf's calisthenics program. And I thought Alexander kept up very well with the big kid-sized batleth with Skeletor there. And this time around, the actor inside Skeletor was Dennis Matalone. I found that out in the notes doing my research. I thought that was hysterical. And like Allison, I very much enjoyed nobody being willing to join Geordi in his. He was having a full nerdgasm. He just wanted to share it, and nobody was wanted to nerd out with him. Yeah, I don't say that.
Word of the day.
This one it applies. I mean, what can you say? And I do have a very interesting whopper of a story related to the teacher in the episode that I discovered in my research that I'll save for things left unsaid. And trust me, you're gonna want to hear this because it has to do with football of all things. I'll just drop that little teaser in there. But like Melissa was saying, I love Worf. Ron Moore has gone on record a couple of times saying Worf is more Klingon than Klingon. He overcompensates all the time. Thinks this is what he's supposed to be doing. This is what he thinks a Klingon should be doing. So it was only natural he would try to be that way with Alexander. And poor Worf, he was dropped into the deep end parental wise. He's having to learn how to swim as he goes, one stroke at a time. It's gonna be a bumpy road till they get it figured out. And yeah, as a parent watching it this time, it hit so much more differently, especially the scenes where Worf trying to talk to the kid. We've all been on. Anyone who's a parent has been on both sides of that conversation. It's not easy for either one of you to. I did this, but I can't really explain why I did this. But I mean, Alexander, the poor thing. His mom dies. He gets introduced to his dad. Dad ships him off to grandparents. They're not doing. Things don't go well there. So back he comes. But what Deanna said, I feel is a good advice for really any parent. Talk to your kid too when you're making decisions like that. Find out what they want and take that into account. Because when you try to do it yourself, if it's not something they want to do, they will bite you tooth and nail on it. And it just goes so much better if you find out what they want too. I could keep going, but yeah. But I loved Alexander. I think he's a cutie pie, and apparently he loved having the prosthetics on his face. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I really, really, really love the scene of the two of them walking down the hallway. Big giant Worf, little bitty Alexander sits walking along next to him, just answering yes, yes, uh-huh. He's just so cute. I just want to squeeze him. But yeah, like Allison, I also love Worf's mom. Yeah, her listening to her with her accent really makes me miss my husband's Polish grandmother. I've talked about her before. She has had just the sweetest accent. Everything she said with her accent just sounded so great, and just 10 times funnier. And when she goes, they still have a lot of years left. It hits a little differently because, unfortunately, about 6 months after this episode aired, she passed away. So it makes me wonder if we might have gotten a couple more episodes with Alexander's mom sprinkled throughout if she hadn't passed. But yeah, she's just so sweet, and Worf softens around her. And we love to see what the softer side of Worf, because we don't get to see that very often. Very few people are able to bring out that side of him. But in honor of this, Mrs. Rodzenko, I decided to do a version for the limerick, a version of the old Danny Glover line from Lethal Weapon that, getting too old for this bleep. So I will leave you with that. Your father and I love you a great deal. We hope you understand how we feel. But we're too old for this. His face we know we'll miss. Perhaps living with you will help him heal.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Carrie Schwent, Out on the High Seas. All right, Chuck A., you are up next, aka TNG Fanatic. What do you think of this episode?
Well, it's been quite a few years since I had seen it, and my memories of the episode were, I wasn't sure, the quality. I liked some of the character interaction, but the story was kind of weak. I liked it a little better watching it this time from what I had remembered. It was good to have Alexander on the ship. We do have a few good Alexander episodes coming up. I did catch, I recognize him even through the makeup, but the gentleman that played Vidar, the scientist with the soliton wave, he wound up appearing in Voyager as Pete Harkins, I think it was. He was in charge of the Pathfinder project in Voyager in the last season of Voyager. So he had two different appearances in Star Trek. I was wondering too, about the what do you call it, the holodeck scene that he had it on the entry level program, but the kid was holding his own in the program, and then Worf had a little smirk on his face that he really loved that he took on that program. That was also a very good scene. Like I said, overall, I liked the episode a little better than I had remembered. But there's like the next few episodes, kind of like what Jason was saying, was kind of they're bottle episodes. I'm thinking on the mediocre side. Not that they're bad at all, but we had so many good episodes to start the season. There's kind of a little bit of a lull going on here. But I really enjoyed watching the episode again because I hadn't seen it in so long.
Well, you are right about that actor. My word, I just looked him up on IMDb. He sure has a lot of credits. And you're right, a couple episodes with the Pathfinder, and then the one here in Next Generation. Got over 200 credits on IMDb, and his name is Richard McGonigal. Of course, everybody knows. Thanks very much, Chuck A, aka TNG Fanatic. All right, Anil O. Palat out in Germany. How are you?
Hello. Good. I think, like a lot of people were saying on the recent rewatch of this episode, I liked it a little bit better. I think it starts out a little, or there are points where Worf is really hostile toward Alexander, and as the viewer, right, that makes us not like Alexander. I think that's kind of part of it. And also little kids on TV, like sometimes they come across as annoying. So I think the second half of the episode is a little bit better, and it kind of showcases that Worf is really projecting onto this kid who he doesn't know how to raise because he was raised human. He doesn't want to be human. It sort of goes back what Guinan says when he's looking toward home, he's looking toward Earth, not the Klingon Empire. But I think Alexander really forces his character, him, to look at how he was actually raised, right? And kind of confront his own background. So I think, rewatching it, you get to see that Worf has a lot of things to deal with, that he's going to get 2 shows to deal with them in, so which is great for Worf. And so that's kind of my take on it. It's a little bit better this watch around. And I really like those puppet things, the animal things. I thought they were super cool. I was like, oh, good job. Puppet, I don't know what department that would be, but good job. I really thought those were kind of interesting looking.
Nice.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Anil O. Palat out in Germany. All right, Chris McGee. Well, what German words do you know?
Volkswagen? No.
What do you think of this episode, Gargle? I don't know. You just seem like a kind of guy that had a few German words in your back pocket.
Gesundheit.
Okay.
That's a good one.
This has traditionally just been the Alexander moves in with Worf episode to me, since I'm kind of like a first season Picard in that I'm not really fond of children. I've never really cared much for this episode. That's not to say I don't appreciate it, or that I think any less of the story and the message it conveys. I just don't enjoy watching it as much as many other episodes in this season. And I agree with Jason that the B plot of the Soliton Ways seemed to exist solely to give the Enterprise and Alexander a crisis with a ticking clock. We never hear about Soliton Ways again, as far as I know. Spoiler. Worf's inability to give the teacher, Ms. Kyle, Alexander's birth date because he didn't know it brought back memories of Kalar and a tear to my eye. We've already mentioned how Worf is a bad dad, and this only lends further credence to that view. And he was too busy arguing with Kalar to ask her about his son. We've seen that statue on Worf's coffee table of Kalis and Morath before, but now we finally get the story behind it. And as Jason mentioned, this is, I think, the first time we hear about Kalis on this show, since both Alexander and Worf pronounce his name differently here than in later episodes. Side note, speaking of Ms. Kyle, you can tell that the way that she starts her conversation with Worf with, "Your son is a very bright, very spirited young man. You know there's bad stuff coming." I'm sure those of us who have been in a similar meeting will find those words familiar. And of course, I agree with everyone else. I like that Troy takes it upon herself to do everything she can to help Worf acclimate to being a new parent. I love the counseling scene where she reveals to Worf the possible reasons for Alexander's misbehavior. I'm not a psychologist, but I'll bet a lot of the same signs are recognizable to anyone who has seen a child go through trauma, such as the divorce of their parents, for example. For the memorable quote of the episode, I'll go with Geordi saying, "I'm talking to the wrong crowd." Which is a problem that I'm thankful I don't have with this crowd.
Nice. Thank you very much, Chris McGee. Appreciate it. Great stuff as always. The Matt Boardman is here. What's up, the Matt? What'd you think of this episode?
Well, it's interesting watching the episode this time around because it's each time I watch an episode, there's something new that strikes me. And with this episode, the first thought that I had was it's always interesting as we tell these stories. If you break them down and you look at them, how the adventure occurs when there's no children, or it's always like we watch a movie and it's always like the guy trying to get the girl, but then the movie ends and it's like, well, what happens after that? Does the adventure end at that point? Because once you have a family, it changes the dynamic of your life. And I think in a lot of ways the writers didn't quite know what to do with the fact that they gave Worf this child. And and in some ways I think it was a disservice to send Alexander off, because we could have watched Worf grow in different ways as a parent. This mighty warrior who, as I'm watching him go into these meetings with Picard and everything, I was reminded of my own life when my wife left me with two young kids, and having to balance work and find babysitters and take care of the things that my kids needed, while also trying to maintain a full-time job, having to work weekends while the kids went off with their mother and went to playland, while I was trying to make sure that their basic needs were met. And so I could sympathize with Worf in those moments, that it's not easy. But for those of us who, you don't have to be a parent per se, but that helps. But if you've been an aunt or an uncle, you have little ones in your life that you care about, that you want to help them, you want to see them grow, and you want to participate in their lives, because whether we realize it or not, those little eyes are always on us. And I think that was demonstrated by the way that Alexander interacted with Worf. Here he is, this little kid who was sent off, and now he's got this guy who's like, "Yo, you're my dad," and Worf's like, "Well, okay, yes, I know that I'm your dad," but he doesn't know how to be a dad. And the other thing that I thought at that time was, I was like, okay, what does this say? Obviously, Worf was raised by humans, but what does this say about his relationship with Sergei? Because I found that in my own life, that how I parent my children is very much dependent upon the experiences that I had with my dad growing up. And in a lot of cases, it's doing the exact opposite, because I always want my kids to feel as though they have a safe space and a place that they can come within me to make sure that their needs are met. So anyway, that aside, for those reasons, I enjoy the episode. True, it is not the most exciting. It's not the most technologically involved or anything like that, but I do think that this episode, for maybe some like myself, means a little bit, because we've been through some of those experiences.
Excellently said, as always, the Matt Boardman. All right, Jake's final take. Sirach Lofton, any final thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, I thought it was funny when Worf said he's a child. I informed him of my decision. like I don't get advice from kids. Like, we don't. This is not a sit down meeting of the minds. This is what I say goes type deal. I thought that was hilarious. I also thought that Geordi is the type of guy that will stay after class to talk to the professor. Like, bro, seriously, give the professor a break. Some of us all have a question. You know all the answers, man. Because I saw him when, after the meeting, everybody started funneling out, and he was like, he walked up to the Dr. Jadar and was like, yeah, tell me more and tell me more. I want to know everything. So I thought that was funny. When the scene came that Worf had to talk to his kid, I was like, man, I remember those talks as a kid, and those were nightmares, just to have to sit there and listen to your parent chew you out for an hour or however long. It was like trying to get it over with. You almost would rather they just hit you over the top of the head so you could just take your slap and be over with it. But you'd have to sit there through this long talking of why did you do it and what lessons did you learn, and you're like, oh God, So I remember that as a kid. It kind of had me flashback moments. Yeah, clear thing that Worf's not a good parent is he doesn't lock up his weapons. Like,
Oh man,
you got weapons around the house. Like, we literally childproof cabinets, and he's got a swords hanging around. So like, you got to kind of do that. And funnily enough, like every other kid, they find a way to get into all your stuff. So like, he knew the password to his holodeck program and whatever, like just like a kid getting into your stuff. Also thought it was funny when Worf kept getting interrupted during Picard's ready room meeting thing. I'm like, this is when you need a silent on your phone mode. It's like, seriously, like we can't, turn it off, like turn it down a little bit or something. Like we need to. There's got to be something for that. You can't keep interrupting me whenever I want, whenever you want. So we have to update the comm badge. The flames that threw out of the door, I thought, like, what is this, backdraft? Like, how much fire is it? There's no way this kid's alive. It was like a rocket engine coming off. Who's surviving that? So, anyways, yeah, I had to really like, take a sit back and just watch this episode for what it was, because there's certain things that as soon as I saw it was an Alexander episode, there's certain things I already kind of knew what was going to happen. There was no mystery there. He was going to have awkward moments as a parent. It was going to be weird, and that wasn't surprising to me. So, I kind of expected it, and so that's why there wasn't really much of a twist there for me in this episode. And then the last thing I'm going to say is, I would have liked that they wrote this backstory with his son a little bit differently. I would have liked to have seen him want to be a parent, but not being allowed to, based on his ancestral history, based on him being ostracized by the Klingon Empire, or some kind of factor that didn't allow him to take custody. That would have taken the onus off of him, and it would have been on some external factor. By him not wanting to do it, and then showing another willingness to kind of ship him off to boarding school again, like it makes it look like he doesn't want to do it, as opposed to something else obstructing it. And I wish that they kind of wrote it so that it was something else obstructing it, whether it was some diplomacy, Starfleet rule, whatever, something to do with his Klingon background or whatnot. But that's my take. It just I know he has a lot of healing to do, and I just felt sad for Alexander having to go into situations where he's not wanted. And, that's like the worst thing for a child, to feel like they're not wanted in a household. Like, push you over to here, you go over to your mother's, you go over to your grandmother, you go over there. I don't want to deal with you. And when you get shoveled around like that, then it has really damaging, lasting effects on the kids, psychosis. So I just wish that it was written in a slightly different way. And then, yeah, that's it. That's it.
Right. Good stuff always, Sirach Lofton. But it's time for us to go, everybody, if you can believe that. So thank you very much to the Matt, Chris, Anil, Chuck. By the way, Chuck loved the backdraft comment, so we'll get more on that on Things Left Unsaid. Thank you to Carrie Schwent, Allison, Jason, Melissa, for myself, Sirach, Melissa, and Mr. Aaron Eisenberg. Thank you all very much for hanging out with us. We will see you next time, and until then, always remember the 7th rule.